So I'm Jay. I'm a product manager on the Power BI team. I mostly focus on DAX, the programming language that everybody loves to hate. That's what I work on. And I also did composite models. If you heard about um, the feature that previously was called Direct Query for Power BI datasets and Azure Analysis Services that I renamed to composite models over Power BI semantic models. That was also one of my features that I built. So I don't just do DAX. I also do other stuff related to DAX or related to modeling in more general sense. So yeah, I've been on the Power BI team for 4 years now, I think, and been with Microsoft forever. And also always did Power BI even before I was on the Power BI team, and even before it was Power BI, when you had all the add-ins in Excel, with Power View and Power Map and Power Pivot, of course, Power Query. So all of that, I just latched onto that very early and made that part of my career. So yeah, and then I got the opportunity to join the team, which was really cool. So now I'm here.
Yeah, no, this is great. And you guys been working with Power BI I feel like the last few years, so many things are going on. Visual calculations and the new improvement of the native visuals in Power BI. So you guys are doing a phenomenal work.
Oh, thank you. We're trying. We're trying to
Yes.
keep the ball moving every month, right? And sometimes it might feel like for the community that we're not investing, right? We have had that feedback for a while. The reason was at that time that we were all investing in very big things like visual calcs, right? And if we're investing in big things, then we don't have a lot of updates to share, right? Like then we just wait until the big thing is ready for us to share. So if it becomes quiet, it doesn't mean that we stopped investing in the product. It's just that we're working on big things, so you need to be a little bit more patient. So anyway, no, it's exciting. It's exciting to work on a product that is updating almost every week and at least every month, but oftentimes in our servers every week is a new update. So it's a very fast-paced environment.
I believe so. Yeah, it's a lot of work that you guys are doing behind the scenes. I had this question in mind for a while as well. So what inspired you to work on visual calculations? What was one of the main drivers?
One of the main drivers was actually mostly there's two things. Feedback. Like DAX being hard has been in the top 3 of our feedback from customers for years. Like people have complained for years and years and years that DAX is very hard, very hard. And even it went as far that we had customers tell us, hey, I am hesitant to adopt Power BI, or I'm blocking further adoption of Power BI in my organization because DAX is so hard. Right? And that's a problem for us as a product. Of course, we want everybody to use Power BI, right? And if an organization says, I'm not going to use Power BI because DAX is too hard, that is a warning signal. That's a red flag. You need to do something about that as a product, right? And then, so that was number one. The other one for me more personally is I struggle with DAX. Like every day when I have to write DAX, I go like, oh, okay, here we go. I can do the basic stuff, right? I can do, of course, I would safely assume everybody that has ever written any DAX, they can write a sum or an average, right? I mean, you understand that, but I don't know about you, but the moment you write calculate, the moment you start writing the function called calculate, I immediately get a little bit worried because I'm like, can I make this work, right? Like, can I trust my own ability to make this work? And often I can, but not always. And let alone if I do a summarize or a top N1 trick or other tricks. There's so many tricks that people have to learn to actually make this work properly. That was really inspiration for me as well. So when I joined the team, I started looking around like, hey, what are the big ideas in this space, the DAX space, that we can do that will actually make a difference, right? Not an incremental difference, like adding a bunch of new functions. No, actually a big, big difference. And I stumbled across a specification from a previous product manager of the same space before me called visual calculations, and it never went anywhere. And after I started digging a little bit more, I found 2 more older specifications. So I'm actually the 4th one trying to make this happen. And I think I got the furthest. Well, I know I got the furthest because now it's in public preview and nobody got that far. So it's not my original idea, right? Want to be very clear. It's not my original idea. It has been around forever. You can also see that Marco Russo, for example, posted an idea about that on our ideas forum as well. So it's not I'm not the inventor of this thing, right? It's just that I found it and I was like, this is a big thing that I'm looking for to actually make a dent in DAX and make DAX easier. So that's the goal. Let's make DAX easier for the rest of us, right? Let's make DAX so easy you don't have to go to training. You don't have to read the books. You don't have to become an expert on day one, right? I'm not saying you should never go to training. I'm not saying you should never read any book. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to postpone that moment, right? Today, for you to be successful with DAX, you almost on day one have to start reading the books and take the trainings. What we're saying with Visual Calcs is that should not be necessary. Like, you should have a way to get started using just your regular knowledge, maybe from Excel background. You should be able to do the things you have to do on day one, right? And then once you're ready, you should be able to grow into the more advanced stuff. And that's where the trainings and everything is. But today, we only have the advanced stuff. We don't have the simpler version, right? And that's what Calcs is really targeted towards. So one other way of saying it is, I like to think about DAX as a swimming pool. And maybe that resonates more because I have a daughter now who can't swim yet. If you think about DAX as a swimming pool, today we only have a deep end, right? That means if you jump in, you better know how to swim.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you'll drown, right? So what we're doing with Visual Calcs is, instead of only having a deep end, we're giving you an end that is higher, where you don't drown, right? Where you can just walk in, even if you don't know how to swim, and you can still survive, right? You'll be fine. Like, the water will come to maybe your middle, but whatever, right? You won't drown. You won't be in any trouble. Once you're ready, you can go deeper into the deep end, right? And DAX becomes this journey of a slope into more complex solutions and more powerful solutions. So I like to think about Visual Calcs as this shallow end to the DAX complexity.
Yeah, it's basically, here's what I'm thinking about visual calculations. I feel like it's like a complement. This is just the beginning, right? It's a complement to the deep knowledge that we need to learn in the future. So this is just the beginning. So
and measures are not going away, right? The need to learn the complicated stuff in DAX eventually to become an expert doesn't go away, right? We're not taking that away, right? We're not like making the DAX into a kiddie pool, right? With only a shallow end. No, we keep the deep end, right? So that's the idea. We allow you to start at the shallow end if you feel more comfortable there, and then move to the deep end later. So that's how I see visual calculations.
I totally agree with that. In order to use visual calculations, do we need to be familiar with DAX? Let's say that I've heard about Power BI. I know it's just drag and drop, to create visuals. But do I need to have the DAX knowledge to start working or playing out with visual calculations?
My goal is that you wouldn't have to have any DAX knowledge. Now, today you don't, right? Today you need a little bit of DAX knowledge because, you need to learn a little bit about the language. But the goal of this feature is to allow you to jump in without ever having seen DAX before. What we do assume is that you have some exposure to Excel formulas.
Yes, Excel is important.
And I would think that is a safe assumption. I think the majority of the people that will install Power BI and open it will have seen Excel before and will probably have built simple formulas in Excel. That is my assumption. So with that assumption in mind, if that's your background, my goal is to make sure that Visual Calcs is something you can just start with. Like, you can learn your way in the tool without having to go learn somewhere else, right? You should feel comfortable just after you discovered this, that you can go somewhere to enter a formula, to do a calculation. You should feel so comfortable that you go like, oh, this is just like Excel. And then the more you start using it, the more you discover it's not entirely like Excel. It actually is different than Excel, but more powerful. And then you uncover more and more and more and more, and gradually you go into this deeper end of measures and, you know, all the stuff that is today is DAX. So the goal here is, assuming you have some previous exposure to Excel, some previous exposure to some Excel formulas, maybe you wrote an if, or maybe you just sum two cells together in Excel, right? Assuming all of that, I think you could get started without any knowledge. That's the goal. Are we there today?
Almost there.
No, not really. I think this is a journey that we're starting on. We need to do better than this, than what we have today. And we will. We have plans to do better.
Okay, that's great. How do visual calculations differ from traditional DAX calculations?
So, great question. They are different in many ways. And you actually have calculated columns and you have measures, right? That's the tradition. That's the two you have. I mean, I'm forgetting about calculated tables for a second. I'm forgetting about calculation groups, like all the, like, I'm just leaving that out for a second, right? Basic version, you have calculated columns, you have measures, right? So visual calculations are a lot like calculated columns in the sense that they execute row by row. They execute by default in a row by row context. So they go across a set of data in a table, and they go from top to bottom by default. They differ from visual calculations, from calculated columns, that they're not pre-calculated, right? The downside of calculated columns is they are pre-calculated, they are part of your data refresh, they load your model, the results are stored. They're not dynamic. Measures, they are dynamic, right? They are calculated dynamically. Visual calcs are dynamic like measures, but they use the simple to understand context from calculated columns, because measures use filter context, which is harder to understand. It's harder to wrap your brain around or wrap your head around to go like, what exactly is the context in which this measure is being executed? What we said with visual calcs is we actually take the simple context from
the visual
calculated columns. We take the on-demand execution from measures, and that's what visual calculations are. Also, big difference, they are not in the model. They are on the visual. The name visual calculations should tell you something. It is on the model, right? On the visual, sorry, not in the model. That means they don't have to deal with the complexity that a measure has to deal with filter context. They can just focus on this one visual, and the data that's in the visual is all the data that exists for that calculation, right? So then they become way easier. So in that sense, they're like a calculated column on a table. They only just care about the table they're on, really, unless you specifically reach out into the model.
Yeah. And you also mentioned something really important here in terms of performance, because if we compare with calculated columns, we are adding more complexity to the model. We are basically hurting, in terms of space. We are consuming more space. What is the difference with visual calculations?
They are calculated on the fly like a measure, so they don't consume space, right?
So we save a lot of memory there.
You need memory just like measures to calculate them, but they will, and even compared to measures, they will be faster. Okay. So if you compare, so there's a couple things about performance, right? It's not only the speed of execution, but also how much weight do you carry in the model, right? And with calculated columns, that's the worst case, right? And like they bloat your model, they make it very slow. They take up a lot of space. Measures, visual calcs don't take a lot of space. They score equal there. But because visual calcs can operate on aggregated data, they don't have to reach back into the low level of data. And I'll give an example in just a second. So their performance is going to be better than a measure. So let's say you're doing a running sum of sales for years, right? A measure, if you write a running sum of sales for 3 years, What a measure will do is we'll go find all the individual sales records for all those 3 years and sum up those numbers 2 years and then sum up the year numbers. That's what a measure will do, which always goes to the individual sales records, right? To figure out what is the total for the year, because it has no previous knowledge of there might be an aggregated version of the sales record, the sales number for that year. Even if it was just calculated, the measure will just ignore it and do it again, right? So the measure will always go to the lowest level of data, almost always, in 95, 99% of the cases. Visual calcs are different. Visual calcs, because they are on a visual, if the visual already shows the sales amount by year, then the visual calc will not sum up the individual sales records,
Right.
because the visual calc only knows about the stuff that is individual. So if the visual shows sales amount by year and that aggregation has already happened, then the visual calc, to do the running sum over years, will just take the numbers for the years. Will not go back into the model to get all the individual sales records. Just the whatever, 5 years, 5 numbers.
Yeah.
That's a performance gain that is out of this world. That just blows measures out of this water, right? So if you have a lot of one-off measures for specific visuals today, you switch those measures into visual calcs, you probably don't even have to change the DAX. You very likely you don't have to change anything or minor tweaks to just naming. You will get performance benefits.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. There you go. This is all yours, Jay.
So I have a demo about a function that many people don't know about yet. Is at level. So is at level allows me to determine whether or not I'm on a certain level in my calculation. So the reason that's interesting is because you can then decide if you wanted to do something different on the lowest level or on a different level. So I have 2 levels here. I've got fiscal quarters and fiscal years, right? So of course, if I just write this, right, it will just be, on every level, it will just take the number of sales amount, right, for that level. So for this level, it will be this, to that level will be the same, right? Fine, nothing special. But if I do something more interesting and say, you know what, I actually wanted to do something else. I wanted to say, if I am is at level, which basically means if I'm currently on a certain level, I wanna do something, right? So I can say I want to check whether or not I'm on the quarter level. Okay, so if I'm on the quarter level, I will just return 1 for whatever weird reason, right? Then if I'm not on the quarter level, which means I should be on the year level or on a higher level, like a total, I'll just return the sales amount, right? And of course, this is a stupid example because why would you return 1? But just to show you what it will do, it will show exactly that. It will just return 1 whenever you're on the quarter level, right? There is a quarter in the row here, right? So that's why you're on the quarter level. But look, when you're on the total for the year, you're not at the quarter level anymore. So we're just returning the sales amount for that year. If you scroll down to all the years, right here, you have a total for all the years. You're not at the quarter level. You're neither are you on the year level, but you're definitely not on the quarter level. So we'll just return the total for the years, right? So if is at level allows you to do custom totals.
For those who want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Most easy on LinkedIn these days. That is where I'm most active. Yep. I still have a Twitter/X account, but Twitter is quickly becoming my X social media.
So mainly LinkedIn, I guess.
Mainly LinkedIn these days. I'm also over on Blue Sky, which is a Twitter alternative. I'm there as well. I'm also on Mastodon, which is also a Twitter alternative. So okay. I'm all over the place.
I would love to have you in the future when you guys have more updates. So I know you're working hard on that.
Happy to come back. No worries.
Awesome.
Just invite me back.
Thank you guys and take care.
Okay. See you all.
All right. See ya.